First up for Rich, this is another catchweight, 195. Are you on your way back up to 205, or are you willing to meet in this middle ground consistently?
Fighting at 195 is, it wasn't my idea for this fight in particular. This is something that Vitor requested, and at this point in time, I'm not in the title hunt at 205. Perhaps I will be at some point in time as long as I keep winning fights. But until then, if if the UFC has exciting fights for me at 195 pounds and fights that the fans want to see, then I'm willing to drop and do what I need to do just to put on good fights.
Every time UFC goes someplace new, you're on the card. Do you feel like you've got sort of an ambassador status these days?
I don't know. If the UFC wants to use me as ambassador, that's fine. It just seems like the UFC is going to a lot of new places here recently, Dallas being one of them. But I mean, all my fights recently have been in new places. I was working backwards. I was in Germany. I was in Ireland. Of course, that was the second time we went to Ireland, but it was a new city in Ireland. I'm going to Dallas next time. Prior to that was Atlanta. That was the first time in Atlanta. And the UFC is just doing such a job of expanding at this point in time that it's nearly impossible to not fight in a new city. But yeah, I do feel like they kind of put me in that ambassador position, but I'm not the only athlete that they're doing that with, and I don't mind doing it at all.
Also wanted to ask if you've had any interest in continuing your acting career.
No, not right now. My focus right now is for the fight and everything, and I'll worry about that kind of stuff, as the time presents itself when I'm not training.
You're not trying to keep up with Rampage or anything like that?
No, I'm definitely. You're not going to see me as Face or something like that in the A-Team movie. That's for sure.
All right, and finally, how's your drumming coming along?
You know what? That's my downtime practice, and when I'm not in Seattle, when I'm in Seattle, I don't have my kit up there, so I miss it. But when I'm here in Cincinnati. During the day, I'll sit down on the thing. It just helps take my mind off of stuff, whatever, training, daily grind, and all that, and just sit down for hour and a half at a time. It's something that I definitely love doing.
As somebody mentioned before, you've had your last couple of fights at Catchweight. After having already been champion, is it more important at this point in your career to have those exciting fights or to make another run at the title in either the middleweight or light heavyweight division?
It honestly really doesn't matter to me. I think at this point in time, I'm just excited. I mean, I'm interested in putting on exciting fights for the fans. So if in the process of that whole thing, if I continue doing the things I need to do and winning fights and stuff like that, eventually I'll make my way back to a title run. And if I can get back to the title run, that'd be a great Cinderella story for me before I retire. But if not, in between now and then, if I'm putting on great fights for the fans, then I'm happy doing that.
Definitely. And to follow up on that, light heavyweight division is probably one of the most stacked in the UFC. How do you see yourself matching up with some of the other light heavyweights in that division?
I'll tell you what, for me, these are going to be tough matchups just for the simple fact that I'm not a big 205-pound fighter. And so, a lot of these guys are taller than me, wider than me, longer than me. I'm going to deal with weight issues and strength issues probably. So a lot of the matchups at 205 are going to be for me, but I'm willing to try to tackle.
If Anderson Silva is to somehow lose the championship or vacate the championship at 185, would you be interested in moving down back to 185, considering you kind of expressed, thoughts as far as, being kind of small at 205 compared to most of the guys state-of-the-art at that weight now?
You know what? I don't know. I haven't really thought of that. Quite honestly, I mean, the first thought that pops into my head is that if Anderson were to lose the title at 185 and I was to try to sneak down there and regain the title, which would be much more difficult than me just coming in and doing that. In my mind, I'd almost feel like, I don't know, like by doing so I dodged the bullet or something like that. And I don't know if the fans would view it that way, and I wouldn't want it to be viewed that way either. So all those kind of roads and stuff like that, I'll entertain that kind of thought when I cross that path, and until then, I'll just continue on my course.
As far as facing Vitor, I mean, what kind of are you looking out for and looking to avoid from him? I mean, what have you seen when you've looked at tapes of him? What impresses you? I mean, what's kind of like your thoughts on him right now?
Well, I think that Vitor still poses a threat the way he did, several years ago with his speed and explosiveness of his hands and all that kind of stuff. And that's obviously something that we're going to be looking out for. But more recently, he's become much more well-rounded MMA fighter. And that's going to obviously pose more of a challenging fight because, if I find myself in a little bit of trouble on my feet, it won't be as easy as just taking him down and stuff like that. He could give me problems there as well. So I just really, what it boils down to is, come the 19th, I have to worry about the way that I execute my game plan. And if I do what I know that I'm capable of doing, then I'll do fine. But if I let Vitor unfold his game plan the way that he wants to and impose his will in the fight, then that's where I'm going to run into trouble. So really on the 19th, I'm my own opponent.
Rich, as we all know, your opponent was changed for this fight. I know lots of people are excited to see Vitor back in the organization and see how you fare against him. But I'm wondering what you felt when Dan Henderson was taken away from you as an opponent, because my sense is you perhaps felt there was some unfinished business with him after 93.
Yeah, I feel that way, but all in all, and I've said this in other, I've said this before with other questions, is that primarily right now I'm interested in putting on fights that the fans want to see if I'm not fighting for the title. And when Dana announced that it was myself and Dan on the 103 card in Dallas, the fan reaction was less than excited. And because of that, even though I would like to fight that fight again, if people don't want to see it, then I'm not going to push for it. So I believe that this is a more exciting fight for the fans, and so we'll give them what they want.
Can I ask, did you get any feedback from people that you ran into? Perhaps they're not going to say anything to you, but were you surprised by the fact the reaction was pegged at that people didn't want to see it?
Yeah, maybe I was a bit surprised, but I didn't really get any feedback from anybody, and you're not going to. It happens, but it's rare when you run into a fan that says, "Yeah, I thought you really lost that fight." When most fans you run into, they'll say to you, "Man, that was a great fight against Dan. I really thought that you deserved the win," or something like that. And I'm sure that most of the people he runs into would tell him the same thing. So, when the UFC decided to not go with that fight, other than, most people that I ran into, like just general fans, really didn't have a whole lot to say about it. And my friends would ask me why, or my training partners at the gym, and when I explained that to them, that there just wasn't a public interest in that fight, then I guess it kind of made sense to switch it up.